All right, welcome to this week's edition of Dugout Dish Podcast, special edition. No recruiting talk. We are going to do our best to pick the Division I NCAA Tournament College World Series participants today. So, as usual, here Andy Kirikides with you and my co-host Keith Glasser. Keith, you ready to do this?
Ready as ever.
All right. We'll jump right into it. We won't get into any of the RPI controversy and the selection or whatever. We're just going to get right into the brackets. Going to break it down regional by regional. We'll move into super regionals, and then we'll pick our 8, and then we'll both take a stab at who we think is going to take home the trophy at the end of the year. So first regional, we'll start off in Winston-Salem, and I think this is the toughest regional in the whole bracket. And it kind of sucks for a team like Northeastern and a team like Maryland to get stuck in a bracket with Wake Forest, because I think both of those teams are good enough to win a regional. I'm particularly partial to Northeastern, and if they weren't in a bracket with Wake Forest, who I think is probably the best team in the country for a lot of different reasons, I think they're a team that they could certainly win a regional. And the way they're built, they pitch. You got 5 guys, double-digit home runs. They got a nice blend of old and young, super well coached. They've had some big wins, BC, UConn, Maryland. But I don't see them. I think it's going to be really tough for
they swept Indiana
anybody
State
to go
too.
into Wake Forest. Yeah, and they swept Indiana State, who is a host, who's got a host regional. So I'm going to go Wake. I think that's a super interesting regional to watch. And if you want to see some really high-level baseball in one bracket, you should tune into that one because it's going to be a good one.
Yeah. I mean, Wake they've been number 1 for quite a few weeks in a row here at the back half of this season. I don't, you and I were talking about it yesterday, I think, with Jonathan before we went live. I don't think they lost an ACC series, yeah?
No, and I think that's the first time anybody's gone through the ACC without winning a series since 2008.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredibly impressive to do in the conference that put – I think ACC has 8 teams in the tournament, which,
correct.
And you could and there were a handful of other teams in that were on the bubble, pending what happened the last couple of weeks and in the tournament. So that's you can argue till you're blue in the face over what conferences are best, whether it's the SEC or the ACC. But to not lose a conference series in arguably the best conference in the country is incredibly impressive to do. It's between Coach Walter and Coach Soleno and Coach Mascara and everyone else who's involved there, that's a incredibly impressive feat to accomplish over the course of a season, which makes them obviously the number 1. But it's going to be a tough regional for Maryland, who had a really good year, and a Northeastern team that has been good for a very long time. They're incredibly well coached. They can flat out pitch too. They get dudes in there to that pitch for them, and it's not a mistake that they're 44-14 this year and had another really good year. But yeah, all in all, I mean, I do think, I think Wake Forest is going to get out of that regional. I think Northeastern is probably going to be able to pitch it enough. I think Northeastern might surprise some people and end up in the finals. But all in all, I think Wake ends up getting out of the regional in Winston-Salem and hosting the Super, at the in their home yard.
Yeah, and I mean, they're built to win at home. They got that power lineup, but they're a lot more diverse than they've been in the past. And they got some guys who move the ball, they run, they really play defense, specifically in the middle of the field. They've got horses on the mound. They've got some guys out of the bullpen who've been really good. I think they're the best team in the country. Long way to go, but
they're 29-3 at home.
I think it's really, they're so complete, and like a lot of things happen in baseball, everybody knows that. And college baseball is even funkier because you're playing in these smaller windows and you don't have quite as much turnaround time. But if you're looking at a team that there's not a ton that you can look at and go, like they've got some vulnerabilities. But I hope Northeastern makes a run at it. I love that staff, and I had the pleasure of coaching against them and Class Act. They do just an unbelievable job of identifying talent, developing talent, and they're dynamic. I mean, they got 5 guys with double-digit bolts, and they've got one of my favorite college baseball players of all time, Tyler McGregor, who's a former Columbia Lion, went off and hit 18 jacks for him as a grad student. So, but I'm going to go Wake too. So I think we're both 1 for 1 there. Wake's going to take that regional. All right. Moving on to their paired bracket in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, overcoming some controversy to host a regional. Lost their head coach to a betting scandal. Seemed to have been able to pick up the pieces and actually have been playing really well. We got them, BC, Troy, who had a really good year out of the Sun Belt, and then Nicholls State out of the Southland Conference. I'm going to stick with my Massachusetts guys. I think the BC story and the bounce back they've had, and what that staff's been able to do and develop guys and bring in guys in. I'm going to go BC. I think they're a tough group. I think they got the cojones to go down to Alabama and win that regional. So that's my pick. I'm going to go the BC Eagles bird ball.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in the same boat with you here. I think that Boston College had a phenomenal year, and kind of given everything that they have to work with there, they've, especially over the last couple of years, I think that they went from being the doormat of the ACC for a while to really competing the last couple of years and finally kind of turning the corner. I mean, there was a local kid from where I'm from who got drafted out of there last year, Luke Gold, who I remember seeing when he was a freshman in high school. And Coach Rossi and I were watching him, and he dove 6-hole and threw a kid out by like 7 steps. And I was like, whew, I wonder when that kid's going to get drafted. And it was like 7 years later. But, I agree. I think that they're based off of their geographic region and the amount of games they have to play on the road to start the year. They're not really playing a home game, I don't think, until mid-March. And I'm looking at it right now. It's mid-March, and they don't play a home series at home until the end of March, which, to spend the first 5-6 weeks on the road and still churn out 35 wins is pretty telling of, how battle tested and good they are. So, I agree. I think Boston College, I think it's tight, but I do think Boston College eventually gets the win over the Tide. You can only cheat death so many times.
All right, so we're both on the same page through that regional, through the first 2 regionals. We'll move on to Gainesville. We got the Florida Gators as the 1 seed. Been a top 5 team all year long. I've watched them a couple times. It's another one of those teams like where are the holes? Maybe the bullpen at times. Like I've heard some chatter about the bullpen, but then they go and carve people up for a couple weekends. They got that I'm gonna probably pronounce his name wrong, but that Gaglione kid who left-handed power arm throws on Sundays, and then I think he's got 29 home runs or something like that. They got a potential big leaguer at shortstop. Got one of the best outfielders in the country in that Langford kid. They're going to be a tough out. Then you got UConn is the 2 seed. well-established power at this point. They're one of those teams that every year bucks the conversation of Power Five, Power Five, Power Five. Like UConn is a staple in college baseball at this point, 43-win team. Then you got Texas Tech, they win a lot of baseball games out of the Big 12, and then you got the Florida A&M, who kind of finished middle of the pack in the SWAC, but were able to get hot in the tournament, and they're coming in. I don't really think they have a fighting chance here, but I don't think anybody in there has got a chance to beat Florida if they're playing well. I'd like to think that UConn could get there, but it's tough to bet against Florida in that regional. I think they're deep enough where if they did slip up a game, that they're deep enough on the mound and offensively good enough that if you get into that fifth game, they can just bludgeon you. So I'm gonna go chalk in the Gainesville regional, and I'm gonna take Florida to move on to the Super.
Yeah, I'm with you. I just don't know if, to your point, anyone is going to be deep enough to really go arm to arm with them. UConn is really, really good. And they've really have become the premier team in the Northeast / Mid-Atlantic or New England area over the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years. There's numerous big leaguers that have come out of there, and they've won a ton of games. I just don't know if they're going to be good enough this year to, really go into Gainesville and beat Florida. I wouldn't be shocked, quite frankly, if they do force the winner take all game and they're in it. I have Florida beating UConn in the finals of that regional. So I wouldn't be shocked if they're, in it for a very, very long time. But Florida's just been so good this year. I just don't know if they're, I don't think they're going to get beat at home in Gainesville in a regional this year.
And I think the other thing that I think has to be said for people who are listening is that when you're Florida and you're in this regional, like, you don't throw your guy against A&M.
No.
So, if you're, there are a couple regionals here where you slip up, or there's a couple 4 seeds here, like really tricky, where you might have to, you're 1 seed, like you might have to throw your guy, because there's a couple. Santa Clara is one of them. We'll get to them, but Florida, like, you got to feel pretty good that, it wouldn't surprise me if Coach O'Sullivan, decided, maybe they even throw their midweek guy in game 1 and just really line it up so that if they do end up slipping up at some point, that they're still able to stack that. But, I doubt they're going to throw their guy. They're going to count on. Now, I don't know Florida A&M real well, so maybe they got a dude at the front end that, they're going to have to grind through. Most schools who make it into the NCAA tournament, they got somebody at the front end that can compete and has got some good stuff. But yeah, I'm going to go Florida there too. Columbia, South Carolina. At one point, South Carolina was trending towards being the best team in the country, and they've slipped up a little bit recently, haven't been playing as well. And this is a tough one. You got South Carolina as the 1. You got Campbell, the Camels, as the 2. You got NC State Wolfpack as the 3, and then Central Connecticut out of the NEC. It's an interesting one. My hunch is Campbell. I think they got some really good front end arms, and they're very athletic. They run, they hit for power. Like, that's a deep team. I think they're going to have a tough time getting by Florida, but that team's good enough to go to the College World Series. Like, they've got power arms. They can get swing and misses. Offensively, they're well-rounded. So Campbell's going to be my pick for this regional, although something about that NC State team, like, every year they get to the postseason recently, it seems like they get hot, and they got some older dudes. They got a couple grad transfers from Davidson that have been around. They played a lot of baseball. Those guys are experienced, and I think when you're traveling to play in these kind of settings, I think that having an older group or older core group of guys, I think, matters. But I'm going to stick with my gut on this one, and I'm going to say Campbell goes on to face Florida in the Super.
We differ here.
Who do you got?
I took the Gamecocks, the
Okay.
host. I did take chalk here, and the reason I did is everyone loves everyone loves the story, and people are upset that Campbell's not hosting and blah blah blah. And look, Campbell had a phenomenal year. I mean, take nothing away. You win 44 games. Like, you had an unbelievably good year. Like, there's no doubt about that. Um, you know, but I think it's really hard. Like, I know South Carolina hasn't really been playing that great leading up to the regional, but you're an SEC team who had 39 wins and you're 26-7 at home. Like, it's going to be really hard if that place is packed, which it most likely will be, and they get a lot of fans at South Carolina. It's going to be pretty hard to get in there and beat them, enough to where you're going to be able to win that regional. Like, I mean, if they do, they can, whoever wins that regional, whether it's, if it's not South Carolina, if it's NC State or Campbell, like they're going to be dangerous against Florida. Like, it's going to be really hard to go in there and win that regional. But I just think that I think the run is likely going to end here by the end of the weekend when it comes to the Fighting Camels of Campbell.
You make a compelling argument, then you might be right. We will see. All right, moving on. Coral Gables, Miami team is going to host this one. I mean, what are you supposed to say? Like, they're good. 40-19 in the ACC. Like, kind of hovered around the bottom of the top 25 for like the first half of the season, and then really started to play well at the back half. Like, they got a super bro in that Morales kid. He's a monster. You shouldn't be able to put those numbers up in the ACC. Like, he's going to be a super high draft pick. And I know they got, what most people, I don't know what the exact numbers are, but the Walter kid out of the bullpens, widely considered, maybe the best closer in college baseball at this point. I'm sure people will have other names that they want to throw in there, but, he's certainly in the conversation. They're going to play Maine, out of the American East. Coach Durba's done an awesome job up there. But I don't think they're going to be able to overcome the Hurricanes in that game one. And then you got Texas, Louisiana. And to be honest with you, this is the regional where I don't really feel good about the pick. And because of that, you know what? I'm gonna stay off of chalk here. And I'm gonna go with a little bit of an underdog here, and this is I'm gonna go with Louisiana. I don't have like a good reason. They've been playing well of late. It's a 41 team in the best conference nobody talks about in the Sun Belt. I saw Texas play earlier this year. Obviously, it's a really good ball club, but they didn't jump off the page to me as a world beater. And yeah, I'm gonna go Louisiana. I'm gonna roll it. I'm gonna roll the dice with the raging Cajuns down in Louisiana Lafayette.
Well, we're going to differ here too. And there's going to be a good friend of ours that is not going to be happy with me, but I'm going to hook them in this regional. I think Miami is obviously really good. Again, you don't win 40 games and be really good in the if Wake doesn't have the year that they have, we're talking about Miami being one of the best teams in the country. But I just, same kind of thing. Like, I remember watching some games earlier in the year where, they're playing some opponents that maybe aren't that strong. And it's almost like they, weren't showing up. And I think that sometimes when you play the 4 seed and, It's imperative to get off to a good start. And I just looking at Texas' schedule. I mean, they lost early to Arkansas, who's really good. They beat a really good Indiana team. They lose by 1 to LSU. They go to Cal State Fullerton. They lose the series, but they lose 2 one-run games. And then from there, they really started playing really good baseball. You sweep Texas Tech, you beat A&M. They beat K-State and the Baylors. Oklahoma's a tough series, but I just thought that they've played a really tough schedule. They've played some really good teams, and they've beaten a lot of really good teams. And I thought that when you can kind of get into they sweep West Virginia to end the year, and then you don't play great in the tournament, but you have a week to clear it and get back after it. I just thought that they closed the season out really well. They played, some tough teams. So I picked the Texas Longhorns to come out of the Coral Gables Regional.
Fair enough. I was at that Oklahoma Texas series. It's a cool place to watch a baseball game. Moving on to Stanford. You get Stanford hosting at the Sunken Diamond. We've both been there. Really cool place. They got A&M, Cal State Fullerton, San Jose State. For those of you who don't know, Cal State Fullerton's out of the Big West. San Jose State, Mountain West Conference. San Jose State, finished first in the conference and won the tournament. A well-earned bid. 4 seed. They could make things interesting in this regional. Fullerton and Stanford have a ton of history going back all the way to the 80s, fighting to get a College World Series. And, and then you got A&M, which is an obvious power here. I'm going A&M, even though Stanford has been in the top 10 pretty much all year. But here's why. Let me tell you why, Keith.
Someone's going to be very happy with you and mad at me.
Yeah, you disappointed him, and I'm gonna make him happy. But let me tell you why. Stanford is not a hard place to play on the road.
Sure.
It's like a little bit of a country club atmosphere. It's a beautiful place to play a college baseball game. It's a gorgeous setting. But there's a big difference between having to go into Stanford versus having to go into Arkansas. Right? It's
Fair.
not a rowdy setup. There's going to be 4,000 or 5,000 people there, but you walk into one of A&M is not going to be intimidated by a few fans that may heckle them, right? They have one of the coolest atmospheres in college baseball, and they got to walk around the SEC, which is just a gauntlet of wild places to play. And for that reason, I think that A&M's talented enough, right? How many wins do they got? Let me go through my list here.
36.
36 wins in the SEC. Yeah, I know Stanford's good. They're really good. 38 wins in the Pac-12, but let's call it like it is. Pac-12's down, right? It's not the conference that it was 4 or 5 years ago. It's just not. Arizona snuck in, ton of controversy around that, but you don't have Arizona State's not the powerhouse that they used to be. Are they going to be in the future? Yeah, probably. You'd think they bounce back, but UCLA wasn't quite as good as they were this year. USC, they stepped up. They had a pretty good year. A lot of people thought they should have got in, but I just think that Texas A&M going through the SEC is a battle-tested group. The environment's not going to slip up with them, and they have the talent to go toe-to-toe with Stanford, who is one of the more talented teams in the country. But I'm going Aggies. I'll make a friend happy. That's my pick for the Stanford Regional.
I went chalk. I went with Stanford. You make a very compelling argument, which makes me start to second guess myself, but I'm not going to. I'm going to stick with Stanford. They've been consistent all year long. You got wins over Fullerton, you sweep Rice, you sweep Oregon State, who got in. So they have wins over They have a win over Oklahoma. They split that series in a 4-game set in Norman. The sweep Cal, you split with Texas Tech. They beat Washington, they beat UCLA, you beat Arizona State, you beat Arizona, you beat Washington State. Like, you know, I and when you're 20-7 at home, like I know the Sunken Diamond it's not College Station, it's not going into Arkansas or South Carolina or some of these other Tennessee, Vandy, places like that, where you're going to have to go in and be really, really good to beat these teams. But I do think there's something to be said about, having 20 plus wins at home and being, they have 17 wins on the road. That's hard to do too. Winning, in order to be able to have really good seasons, you have to win on the road, and to be 17 wins on the way on the away from home and 20 at home. I think that they're going to be set up just fine to walk away with a regional win from Sunken Diamond. Now, if my Coral Gables pick wins out and your Stanford, then we have a Texas A&M matchup, which will, the state of Texas might explode. I don't know if it's big enough for that super regional.
I like it. All right, moving on. Conway, South Carolina. Coastal Carolina hosting out of the Sun Belt. They got Duke, UNCW, who won the CAA regular season despite being in the same conference as a really, really, really good Northeastern team that we alluded to earlier. A lot to be said about that. And then you got Ryder out of the MAC, who put together another really good season, 35-19.
Dr. Barry Davis.
Yeah, Dr. Barry Davis. It's a quality ball club. They could sneak up on you, but I'm going to go Coastal, right? I just think they've been too good all year. They're playing at home. Duke's dangerous. They had spurts this year where they were really, really good. And UNC's a tricky one. Like, I'm going to go Coastal, but UNC is a scary one in this regional. They won the regular season. They won the conference championship for the tournament. They're playing really good baseball. They're going to be really well coached by Coach Hood. I'm pretty sure they played Duke and Coastal this year, so it's not going to be, they're not going to be starstruck by any stretch. Like, it's a program that's produced first rounders recently. They got some power arms. They're always really athletic, and we had to deal with them for 3 years at William and Mary. They're an interesting one, and if I was going to take a sleeper out of this one, it would be them for sure. But I'm going to go Coastal. I think they've been playing too good all year long. They get a chance to host. I think they take advantage of that opportunity, and I think they move on to a super.
I went with the Blue Devils here. And let me tell you why. One, this is a pick for one of my best friends who played at Duke, John Nicola, longtime listener. The other reason is I know Duke has not had a great May, right? Like you can go through and look, like they haven't necessarily played the greatest in May after they won a series against UVA towards the back half of April. Now, stay with my logic here. Being a high-end academic coach, I know that as the semester winds down, we start to focus a little bit more on academics than baseball. And if you think that the Dukies are not focusing a little bit more time in the classroom towards the back half of the semester, I think you're dead wrong. I think that's why we didn't have necessarily the greatest May we could have had. We split with Ryder, who is, in this regional. We lose the series to Georgia Tech, but win a game. And we lose the series to Miami, but win a game. And then we go 2-2 in the ACC tournament, but, you lose one-run games to Miami and NC State, who were both in. It's not like we played terrible. But you know what it is classes are over. Finals are done. We're not worried about going to class. We're not worried about school. We're not worried about grades. We're focused on baseball. Conway, South Carolina is not that far away. It might as well be a home game for us. We're going to roll in there. Duke's going to take this regional.
This is why we got you on here, Keith. That kind of insight. You bring up a really good point that like it's hard. It's true. Like when you coach smart kids, that test period at the end of the semester, like you always worry about it.
Oh yeah,
because the kids are dragging ass, and like it matters. It has an effect on guys, and when you're at Duke, obviously, like that's a piece of the puzzle.
Well, you have. I mean, I can't tell how many times like we would have test weeks at RPI and we'd come out flat. You'd wonder why. Like we just spent 40 hours that week studying. You know, you don't think that's going on there? Come on, Duke, bring it home for me.
All right, Charlottesville, perennial host UVA, great place to play.
We played there.
We played there, coached there a bunch. We got our ass kicked there a bunch by Virginia. Those College World Series teams, the 14 and 15 teams. Yeah, they were loaded. We did get them at the back end, though. We knocked them out of their own regional my last year there.
Hell yeah.
Charles Amir, junior college transfer, super athletic right fielder, got on top of a mid-90s fastball to give us the lead, and we ended up closing it out. And then ECU, oddly enough, who was in this regional, was who we lost to, and they went on to a super. So we got UVA, ECU, got the Oklahoma Sooners, who you mentioned earlier, and a fan favorite on this podcast,
Army Black Knights.
The Army Black Knights. And they're dangerous. That's a good team. I would love to say that I think they can get out of this one, and maybe they surprise some people. Maybe not surprise some people who are plugged into college baseball, but they're tough out. Like UVA can't take them lightly in the first game. That's for sure. They can hit. They're big. They're physical. Obviously, they're going to be tough. They're going to be really well coached. So yeah, UVA's got to strap it on. Like they better be ready, or they could have to come through the losers bracket to win their regional. But this is another one. Like I'm going to go chalk because I think it's tough to win at UVA. I think they're a pretty complete team. They got arguably the best player in the country playing behind the plate for them in Kyle Teal. I mean, the kid's a monster. They got the Geloff kid. They got some young guys who've had some really good years. They're tough to bet against. Like Coach O'Connor's, he's as good as there's been in college baseball in the last 20 years. Coach Mack there's a reason that they very rarely ever have a lull in how they produce offensively. It's just a super well coached team, really good program. ECU's dangerous for sure. Wonder if they can bounce back from dumping the AAC championship game to a really poor Tulane team. But just going to throw that one out there. You lose a conference championship to an 18-win team. I don't know if they'll bounce back from that, but obviously they're really good. They're another one of those non-Power 5 teams that they're in the top 15 every year. Like it wouldn't surprise me if they win this regional, but because they're hosting, I mean, they're 45-12 in the ACC. Like I'm going UVA.
Yeah, I took UVA too. I just don't think that there's they've been as complete a team from start to finish that you've seen in a very long time. And the ACC, I think, has been really good this year. And they've been, 19-11 and 45-12 overall. I mean, they're a really, really, really complete baseball team. It's hard to play at UVA. I agree. I think that this is, from a who's going to play UVA in the championship, I think it's pretty open. I mean, Oklahoma's had, a halfway decent year at 31-26 and get in. Obviously the Black Knights are a pretty physical team who can really pitch it, and they can score a lot of runs. I mean, they scored quite a few runs in the Patriot League Championship Series there. And I was texting with Chris afterwards, and he was like, "I've never seen a team do what we've done in a 2-game set." So that's something to be said. They could win some games, and there could be a hangover with ECU. I know they're good. Like, you don't get 45 wins without being good. But it's, there's some tough losses to swallow on that schedule, which, begs the question, like, do you play down to who you're playing? And when you play really good teams, you're really good, and you play not so great teams, it's really tight, or you lose. And that's not necessarily the best recipe for success in a regional sometimes. Some might argue that it is, because you're playing really good teams, but if you find yourself in the losers bracket against the 4 seed, you might be like, we're going to take this one, and then all of a sudden you're 2-Q. But who knows? It's baseball. But I just, like, I think UVA is just far too good, and too complete to really lose this regional.
All right, same page on that one. We'll move on to Baton Rouge. We've also been there. Wild place to play, incredibly hard place to win.
Is it ever?
Obviously, they're really good. Like, they got the best position. I mean, I know I just mentioned Kyle Teal, right? The other dude is Dylan Cruz. Like, who puts up those numbers in the SEC? Like, it's freaking insane. Just an absolute monster. They got Tommy White, who transferred in from NC State, didn't skip a beat. They got the Skennis kid at the front end. Like, good luck beating that dude. I think they get through this one. Like, Oregon State could trip them up maybe, but I think it's really hard to win. I don't think Sam Houston, although Sam Houston's a good club, like, Tulane's a non-factor for me as we got to. Like, American Athletic Conference needs to figure something out. Like, not everybody should make your conference tournament. As you can tell, I can't get over the fact that they even allowed that to happen. But I think LSU gets through this, but LSU's an interesting team. Like, obviously they've put together a really good season, right? And they were number 1 in the country for a long time. I think there's some depth stuff on the mound that could bite them if they get into the Super and they get into the World Series. That they obviously have the star power at the front end, but what separates the Floridas and the Wake Forests, and even somebody like a Virginia, I think the depth is what wins you. When you get to the College World Series, you need depth. Like, you can't roll through there with just a couple guys that you really trust. Like, you're going to rely on guys that you don't expect to have to throw some innings. And I mean, maybe I'm waking a sleeping giant here, but I think they win this regional. I don't know if they get to the College World Series. We'll see when we make the Super Regional picks. But I'll go LSU for the Baton Rouge Regional.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that, like, it's LSU. You're going to throw off in game 1, boat race them, throw arguably the best pitcher in the country in game 2, and you're going to have to get beat twice, which is unlikely. So, LSU.
All right, Lexington. We talked about this one. I'll be interested to see where you go. So you got Lexington, you got Kentucky hosting. Really good bounce back year for that program. You got West Virginia, who was super hot. Got some really good players. They're the 2 seed. You got Indiana, had a great year out of the Big Ten, and then you got Ball State from the MAC. Not to be cute, the MAC, the Metro. No, what is it? The Mid-Atlantic Conference, right? Not to be confused with
Mid-American.
Yeah, Mid-American, excuse me. Not to be confused with the Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference, also known as the MAC. I'm going West Virginia in this one.
Ooh.
I actually thought about picking Indiana, but I'm going to go West Virginia. I think they find a way out of this one. Offensively, been really good. We've played them. They're tough. They're really well coached. I don't think that that's changed, and I think they got a really good group of players, and they were a very good team and a very good conference this year. Um, yeah, it's my pick.
I think this is the most wide open regional, or one of the two most wide open regionals out there. I took the Hoosiers from Indiana to get out of this one and advance to the super regionals. I just thought that, they're a 41 win team. I know they go I think they went 1-2 in the conference tournament. But they've played really good baseball the last half of, leading up to conference tournament time and regional time. It's ever since they didn't necessarily get it done against Maryland at home at the back end of April, like they've rattled off a bunch of wins against and scored a ton of runs against teams. So, I just think that it's wide open. I don't know if there's a lot of news on Twitter about the Lexington regional, and that's whatever. But I just don't think that it's the most wide open one. West Virginia is going to be good. Kentucky's going to be tough, but I just think Indiana's going to come out of that one.
I like it. All right. Moving on to Nashville, Nash Vegas. We got Vanderbilt hosting. Oregon coming in from the West Coast as the 2 seed. Xavier, Big East Conference champions. A decent chance they get in, even if they don't win that the automatic bid. They had a really good year. Then you got Eastern Illinois or the Ohio Valley. Xavier's sneaky in this one. They have 2 dudes at the front end who are really good, right? And winning that Big East Conference tournament where you have to go through UConn, like you can't dismiss that.
Yep.
And sometimes hot teams who win, like they can keep it rolling. So I think they're dangerous. I think Vandy's probably a little bit too much for all of the teams in here. I do know that they're dealing with a few injuries. I don't know how it's going to impact them. I mean, it goes without saying, like Tim Corbin and his staff, like, they're going to be as well coached. They're going to play as clean as you can play. They're coming off of a SEC tournament championship, which is a feat of it in itself to get through that gauntlet. So I'm going to go Vandy. Xavier, I hope they surprise me. I'd love to see Coach O'Connor win a couple of games in that regional and make it interesting, but I'm going to go Vandy.
Yeah, I went Vandy too. I just, it seems like every year they're peaking now, right? Like every year it starts out, it's like, is Vandy going to be good again this year? And, they're 5-5 or whatever to start the season. And then you get to the tail end of the year and they have 40 wins and they win the SEC tournament or make a super deep run. And it's like, oh, here we are again. So I don't, I picked Vandy over Xavier. Like you're right. I think Xavier is, can make some noise in this regional. You can't get out of the Big East and beat UConn and not kind of, look at that as something that is a pretty big feat in and of itself. So that, I think they stay hot in this, but I just ultimately I think Vanderbilt's just too good. And you're in Vandy, year in year out. Here we go again, Coach Corbin and Brownie and everyone else there. Like they'll keep it rolling and get out of this regional.
Both on the same page with Vandy. Stillwater, Oklahoma State, hosting again. 41 win team out of the Big 12. You got Dallas Baptist out of Conference USA, 45-14. Washington out of the Pac-12 got the 3 seed. And you got Oral Roberts, who a lot of people think is the best 4 seed in the tournament. And it's tough to argue with it when you look at their record, like they're 46-11.
Hmm.
uh, which Oklahoma State's gonna. They're one of those teams that like you got to think really hard. Like, do you really backdoor it against a team that's won that many games? Like, you don't win 46 games by accident. I don't care what conference you're coming out of. For me, I'm going Dallas Baptist. They just win. Um, I don't have a super specific reason. Obviously Oklahoma State has been a perennial power in college baseball for a while now, but I think Dallas Baptist, they can really pitch. Um, yeah, that's my pick. I'm going Dallas Baptist, another Texas team into a super.
Yeah, I took Oklahoma State for no other reason than I just thought that they've been looking at their schedule and who they've beat towards the tail end of the year. I thought they were playing pretty good baseball. The interesting thing is they did lose 2 games to Oral Roberts during the regular season, midweek, obviously. Which you can put as much stock into that as you want. So, I don't know, a lot of people be like, well, they lost 2 games. Like, you're losing midweek, and that's not to say that you're not taking it seriously, but like you're not throwing your best 3 arms midweek on a Tuesday. So I just think that if they're, you know, you roll out with 41 wins and you're 25 wins at home and you roll out one of your 2 best arms in game one, you should be okay. But I had them beating Dallas Baptist. I think Dallas Baptist is really good. I mean, sound like a broken record. Like, you get to this point of the year, like you're 40 plus wins, like you're doing a lot of really good things over the course of the year. They're a good ball club. I just, I thought it was a little bit more of a coin flip. But I kind of just I went with the home team in this one.
All right, we differ again. That's what makes it fun. Auburn. A lot of controversy about them hosting. Period. Probably not worth diving into, but obviously they were in the College World Series last year. Going to be a tough place to play. They got Southern Miss as the 2 seed, 41 win team out of the Sun Belt. You got Sanford out of SoCon, 36-23, and then you got Penn, team who's been really good for several years now. They've finally got over the Columbia hump and won the Ivy League and are back in the NCAA tournament. 32 win team out of the Ivy League. I don't think you can sleep on them. I think Auburn better strap it up. They can pitch. For me, I'm going Southern Miss here. I think that to do what they did in the Sun Belt this year, I think is really impressive. I think the other thing that they got for them, like, this is the last hurrah for their head coach, and I think there's something to be said about it's a really good team with even more purpose to play. So I'm going Southern Miss.
I took Southern Miss too.
Yeah.
I thought they had a phenomenal year, and I went with the exact same thing you just said. This is it's the last go around for their head guy, who's been there for a very long time. So I think that they're gonna rally the troops and really be able to play some good baseball here. So I did the same thing. I took Southern Miss here.
All right, moving on to Clemson. Who will Southern Miss be playing? Clemson, might be the hottest team in college baseball right now. Tennessee's the 2 seed. We all know they're ultra talented. You got Charlotte coming in out of Conference USA. You got the nation's home run leader, and I think the last name's Fisher. I think it's Cam Fisher. They've been really good for the last 3 or 4 years, ever since Coach Woodard got there. And you got Lipscomb out of ASUN, who's always good. I wanted to go Clemson here. I think that I'm gambling that Tennessee puts it together for 3 games with Dollander and some of the power arms that they got. And I think positionally they're super athletic. They've been up and down, but I'm going Tennessee. I just think they find a way to get it done here, and some of that star power, rises to the top for this one. So I'm going Tennessee.
I really thought we were going to differ here. I thought for sure that me picking Tennessee was gonna be a difference here in the two of us, but I guess it's not. Clemson is, obviously one of the hottest teams in the country right now. But I agree. I think that, Tennessee is ultra talented. They've been so up and down all year long, which has been it's been a super weird year. They were started out super high, then they were not ranked, and then, then they finished the year pretty high. They're so talented that if they can put it together for a 3 or 4 game stretch in a regional, like they're super dangerous, and they could walk out of there winning 3 games, and I don't think anyone would really be shocked. So I went with Tennessee just kind of more of as a revenge tour of having a tough beat last year at home to Notre Dame and not getting into the World Series when they were arguably one of the better teams that and put together in a very long time. They had 50 something wins, I think. And then, having such an up and down year this year, but being able to, put it together and get to the point of where they are right now. And, you're a 2 seed, you didn't host, and there's that little, it's hard to say you're an underdog, but that chip on your shoulder, like, hey, it's been a tough year. Like, you faced a lot of adversity. Here we go. Let's put it together and win some games.
All right, we're on the same page there. We'll move on to Terre Haute. Indiana State, out of the Missouri Valley, is going to host. Obviously, they've had a really good year. They got Iowa out of the Big Ten as a 2, UNC out of the ACC coming in as a 3 seed, and then the Horizon League champions, Wright State. I wavered on this. I'm going to go Iowa. They got power arms. They seem to be better offensively than they've been. I think they can pitch their way through this regional. I thought about picking UNC. I think it really hurts them that their best player is likely going to miss the regional. The Vance Honeycutt kid, who's a really dynamic player for them. I think that really hurts. Obviously, UNC's, there's plenty of depth and talent on that roster, but I'm going to go Iowa. I think ultimately those power arms and their ability to just kind of stuff it on you. So I'm going Hawkeyes.
Yeah. I took the Hawkeyes too. I thought this was obviously a little bit more of a wide open regional as well. I think UNC is really good. They did announce that arguably the best player is going to be out for the regional. Which obviously changes some things there. So a little bit of a difference there. Indiana State's, they've won a lot of baseball games. I just don't know if you can sustain that run that you're going to be able to have to make in a regional when there's a lot of high leverage situations with some teams that have played some really good baseball, for a number of years together. So I took Iowa here. They played really well in the Big Ten tournament. They lose to Maryland in the championship. So I went with Iowa here.
Yeah, great minds think alike. We'll move on to the last regional before we start picking our final 8. Got Fayetteville, Arkansas. Might be the toughest place to play in college baseball. They got 2 seed TCU out of the Big 12. They got the controversial Arizona Wildcats out of the Pac-12, and then Santa Clara out of the West Coast Conference. We have some insight on the Santa Clara team, and I will tell you what, they might not be able to get by Arkansas, but people better strap it up because they have arms. They have some really high-quality arms, and it's not just pitchability guys. They got guys with stuff.
Sure.
I know they got a couple dudes who are, 93, 95. which always causes problems. I don't know if they're going to, cause a ton of problems for that Arkansas lineup. I mean, shout out to Coach Hobbs and what he's done with that Arkansas pitching staff. They've gone through some injuries this year, and they just keep rolling guys out there. And I think it's a testament to how good of a coach he is and what he's able to do, getting guys ready, for roles that they probably didn't anticipate some of those guys were going to be in. Tough to bet against Arkansas in Fayetteville. TCU's been playing really well lately, but I'm gonna go with the Hogs.
Yeah, I'm the exact same here. I just didn't think, like, Arkansas is so hard to play at, and they have had so much adversity that they've had to deal with this year, with the amount of guys that they've have gotten injured throughout the course of the year, and to kind of have the year that they have, and have the success that they've found when guy after guy has just been hurt. It's a testament to recruiting, the development, the coaching that they do. Coach Hobbs is, in my opinion, one of the best pitching coaches, if not the best pitching coach in the country. So to be able to be where they're at, like, I don't really see anyone being able to go in there and beat them and take over.
All right. Well, we've gotten to our 16. So let's start picking our final 8. We both had the same pick for the Winston-Salem Tuscaloosa matchup. We got Wake, BC. I'm going Deeks. Tough to bet against them. Who you got?
Deeks.
All right. Deeks are the first team in. Got the matchup between Gainesville and Columbia. We did differ here. We both went Gators. I went Campbell. You went South Carolina. I have a feeling we're both going to pick the same regional winner because I'm going Gators. I think they're the second best team. I think there's a little bit of a gap between Wake and Florida and everybody else. So I'm going Gators. Who you got? Gators. All right. Moving on to the Coral Gables Stanford regional matchup. I went Louisiana A&M. You went Texas Stanford. My pick is going to be A&M. Who's your Stanford Texas winner?
Me and Matthew McConaughey.
Oh wow! All right, Longhorns back in the series. Okay. Got the Conway Charlottesville matchup. I went Coastal UVA. You went Duke UVA. I'm gonna go with UVA to move on. What do you got?
UVA.
All right. Baton Rouge in the Lexington matchup. We both went LSU coming out of Baton Rouge. I went West Virginia. You went Indiana. I'm going to surprise some people right here, and I'm picking the Mountaineers.
Wow.
Yeah, I know, controversial, but that's who I am.
I'm taking LSU.
Fair enough. Nashville Stillwater matchup. I got Vandy versus Dallas Baptist. You got Vandy versus Oklahoma State. I'd love to see Dallas Baptist make some noise. I think it's certainly possible. I think that if Vandy gets through the regional, they probably, from what I've read, it looks like they get a couple guys that are on the shelf back to add to their arsenal of talented players. I can't bet against them. I'm going Vandy. All right. Down to the last 2 teams to get in. We got the Auburn Regional versus the Clemson Regional. We both went Southern Miss. We both went Tennessee. I'm sticking on the Cinderella train. Cinderella story. I'm saying Southern Miss breaks through and they represent the Sun Belt in Omaha.
I'm going to take Tennessee, the bad boys.
All right.
Revenge tour.
Like the Detroit Pistons.
Yeah.
Then we got Terre Haute, Fayetteville. We both went Iowa and Arkansas. I think Iowa's super dangerous here, but they're going to have to travel to Arkansas. It's a battle-tested group, premium level coaching staff. super hard place to play in. I can't pick against Arkansas.
Nor can I. The
All right.
Omahogs are back.
So here's the count. Coach K's got Wake, the Gators, A&M, UVA, West Virginia, Vandy, Southern Miss, and Arkansas. Coach Glasser's got Wake, the Gators, Texas, UVA, LSU, Vandy, Tennessee, Arkansas. Who's going to win this thing, Keith?
My dream matchup would be Wake against Arkansas. I don't think that it's a reality. What I honestly think is I think the final, unfortunately, and I hate doing this, I think the final becomes a little bit more chalky. I think it's Wake, Florida in the final. I think Wake wins this thing. I just don't know if they're, the arms that they roll out. I mean, they have a 2.82 ERA. They punched out like 670 dudes this year. I mean, if you can pitch at that clip over the court in a tournament setting, and you have an offense that can score some runs, like you don't even have to score 10. Like even if you pitch to your average and give up 3 or 4, like all you have to do is scratch across 5. I just think that they're far too good. And I do think there's a gap between the depth of them in Florida and everyone else. I mean, UVA could be a dark horse there. But I think it's Wake, Florida. I think Florida or Wake wins.
I'm looking at the bracket now, and I think that Wake and Florida would be in the same bracket in the College World Series just to get to the finals. But I'd have to circle back on the format. But I'm with you. Like, I just think they have to have some really bad games. I think Wake's the best team in the country, so I'm going to go Wake. So we're both on the Deeks. Want to throw this in there. Justin, our producer, he's going Clemson. He said he wants the hottest team in college baseball, so he's going Clemson to run the table. So we're throwing that out there. So there are our picks. We got Wake winning it all. Go watch these games. They're all on television.
Oh, yeah.
See what this is about. You're going to see some teams that you didn't think were good, and you're going to go, holy crap, they're really good. And you're going to watch some awesome baseball. You're going to see some names that you never heard of. You're going to watch some really talented players. It's an awesome time of the year. I wore my 2005 LSU regional T-shirt.
Look at you.
For the affair here. For those of you can't see.
That's an old school cotton tee.
You can basically see through this thing. It's LSU, Marist, Northwestern State Demons out of Louisiana, and the Rice Owls.
Rice Owls.
We did not win that regional. Rice did.
They did.
I think it was the first time LSU had ever lost a regional at home. But that's us for tonight. Any closing words here, Coach Glass?
No, I mean, get out there you don't have to get out there. If you can get out there, go to some of these games. It's going to be an electric atmosphere, but if not, watch it on TV. It's going to be all over the TV and the interwebs this weekend. So hop on it and watch some really good college baseball. The other thing, I will plug this. So I guess I did have something to say. Division II and Division III World Series are going on.
Boom! Don't forget it.
So you can watch those games on the interwebs just as well. I think they both fire up on Friday, if I'm not mistaken. So, you have the Millersville's number 1 in that bracket, and I think Johns Hopkins is number 1 in the Division III bracket. So, still a lot of really good baseball being played at all 3 levels this weekend.
Yeah, definitely tune in to Division III and Division II. You want to see some really good baseball that a lot of people sleep on. Go check out the Millersville team or the North Greenville team. Go check out Misericordia and John Hopkins. You want to see some really good baseball, like tune into that as well. Speaking of the interwebs, Keith, here's where you can find us on the interwebs. www.emdbaseball.com if you want to find out about what we do, helping families and players navigate the recruiting process using our coaching experience, 25 years. to help people navigate that. You want to follow us on Twitter or Instagram. Yeah, it's at EMD Baseball. Hope you join us next week. Tune into those baseball games, and thanks again for listening.